Congratulations to the President-elect of the USA on taking office. I would like to emphasize that we have never refused dialogue. We have always been ready to maintain smooth and cooperative relations with any U.S. administration. Russian terrorist Putin greeted Trump on his accession and spoke about peace. Roman Svitan, Lyotchik instructor, colonel in reserve of the Ukrainian army. I'm so happy to see you. Glory to the heroes. I wish you all health. As we have heard, Putin congratulated Trump on taking office and said that Russia is ready to negotiate with the Trump team on the war in Ukraine. And the goal is long-term peace, not a short truce, as Putin said. How do you interpret this video of Putin's inauguration day? Is it a signal for the U.S. president, for the White House? If so, what kind of signal? Unhandled, far sent on the course of a Russian ship. It's a miracle, the joy of paying attention to yourself. He's going to try to get attention because Democratic leaders haven't been paying attention to him recently. There was a rigid ignoring. Only Schultz tried to contact Putin and Orban with fits, not to mention the leaders of self-respecting countries. For him, the option to return contact is to try to reach out to Trump. He decided that it was easier to return, or at least show the Russian public that he had been welcomed back into the society of respectable people. Roman, we call to our viewers. Write your thoughts on why Putin posted this video on the day of Trump's inauguration. And also post where you're watching us from. We all read, and thank you for being together with Channel 24 and being active, supporting Ukrainian content. Romain, in the Telegram feed, noticed that podcaster Lex Friedman stated the following in a new video. He said he gave Zelensky chances to show Trump and Putin his willingness to negotiate. He started criticizing Putin. The journalist published a statement in which he condemned Zelensky for harsh words and disrespect for the Kremlin dictator, instead of taking a chance for peace. How could the president of Ukraine, according to Friedman, use the historic opportunity for peace in this podcast? What is Friedman's position on disrespect for the Kremlin dictator in this case? For any Ukrainian, the name Putin or his image triggers a gag reflex. The idea of synchronization with Russia, with Putin as the embodiment of federalism. How can Ukrainians react differently? That was a mild reaction. I'm not the one who was asked. I'd tell you what Ukrainians think of Putin, and it's definitely not a missed opportunity. Because Putin can't give anyone a chance. He doesn't control the process. If he tries to stop the fighting, he'll be swept away. He will be swept away by the military, and part of the public won't understand, as 2/3 support genocidal attacks on Ukraine. He can't do that. There's no point in talking to him. They are not worth talking to. We need to bring Russia to the sanctions lockup and break it up. The soft attitude was Ukrainians, and the podcaster's podcast is his personal problem. So this is his perception of, let's say, Putin. They don't have an idiosyncrasy and gag reflex for Russia. Because the Russian army is engaged in the west of the country. If the army deploys to Alaska, they, including the podcasters, will have other questions. Romain, the 3rd Assault Brigade, does not expect a quick end to the war after Trump's inauguration. The statement was made by Colonel Maxim Zorin. He said he did not expect a quick end to the war after Trump's inauguration. I find it disturbing that everyone believes in a ceasefire. Russia has no desire to end this war. As Zorin said, at the moment I don't see any reason for the Russians to quit. Do you see these changes, Mr. Romanet, and do you agree with Mr. Zorin's opinion? We've basically already laid the groundwork for a response. It is not Putin who is waging war against us, but 2/3 of the Russian people. How do we stop them? They are a tenacious horde determined to destroy their neighbors. Not Putin, but someone else if he starts to stop this speeding locomotive. That's unrealistic. Zorin is right. There are no prerequisites in terms of their methods of warfare. 1,500 kilometers of front, 1.5 million troops on both sides, and 100 million Russians supporting the westward movement. Why don't they understand? This problem will not be solved by ourselves, only with the help of partners, and it needs to be solved for several years. We need serious sanctions, from Malik Budanov to the price of oil, as we have said many times. The destruction of the Russian army on our territory, one of the main tasks to be strengthened in strength and means. 1/3 of the funds we create ourselves, 1/3 are given by the Americans, and 1/3 by the Europeans. Europe understands that we are performing a defensive task. The issue with America, Trump will be at the helm and we will act on his decision. Combat intensity. Trump could cut our military budget, including funding and equipment, by 1/3. We'll have to make do. With our own European production. They'll definitely be supporting us by now. Depends on Trump's actions, not his talking points. Everyone doesn't believe the talk because no one trusts words anymore. By actions, it will be clear with what intensity we will fulfill the main task, the collapse of Russia, the destruction of its army on our territory, and the restoration of sovereignty. We have no other task. No one's going to give up. Those who choose to surrender have already surrendered. If someone wants such a fate, let him go to Rublevka. Mr. Roman. As you said, I see reports that Trump wants to sign an executive order banning aid to other countries if it is against the interests of the United States. What will threaten Ukraine after signing such a decree? The decree does not, in and of itself, override America's obligation to preserve territorial integrity under the Budapest Memorandum. If the decree is applied to Ukraine, it will confirm the renunciation of the Budapest Memorandum obligations in an international court. The memorandum is an intentional contract, but we have met its terms. This could almost be considered a done deal, and such an executive order could be the basis for lawsuits in the future, possibly against the U.S. leadership under Trump. This is all understood by U.S. lawyers. They would not apply this to countries with memoranda or treaties with certain relationships. This needs to get out of procedure, and it won't be completed during Trump's cadence. Because our relationship with the U.S. government is tied to the Russian invasion that has already taken place. It won't give Trump the ability to end the bailout quickly. He only has 4 years. He won't do it. It's disadvantageous to America and Trump. Any setbacks on the Ukrainian front will fall on Trump as a heavy burden. He has a good grasp of geopolitics. Not within the U.S., but in geopolitics. Nobody pays attention to America now as it is. Ignores this state, which was an important military and geopolitical player in the last century. To restore America's greatness, as Trump keeps saying, we need aid to Ukraine and to restore commitments to treaties of the last century. Roman, we call to our viewers. Please don't forget to write where you see us from. I would like to remind you that Channel 24 is following the events in the United States. The newly minted Trump has arrived at the White House. American President Joe Biden welcomed him, CNN reported. President Biden and Jill Biden greeted President-elect Trump and Melania as they arrived at the White House following a service at St. John's Church. The morning service is usually followed by a brief private meeting between the President-elect, Vice President, and their spouses. Biden and Trump, along with their spouses, are expected to have tea together at the White House. As is tradition, the president, as he goes, escorts the new recruit to the Capitol for the oath of office ceremony. Please follow and tune in to Channel 24's live stream. At 7:20, we will be on air. Let me remind you that the inauguration in the United States will begin at 19 Kyiv time. Mr. Roman, I would like to turn to the events in the Russian Federation. On the night of 20th of January 2025, drones attacked the Kazan aircraft plant, which produces Tu-22 M3 and Tu-160 strategic bombers. The fact that the plant was attacked demonstrates its importance for military capabilities. Is Russia capable of producing new Tu-160s and Tu-22 M3s, and how actively are they used in the war against Ukraine? Tu-22 in the main Vykoristovuyut for launching missiles X-22. They can also be used for launching daggers. Tu-22M3 and Tu-160 are carriers of 101 X-555, X-55 missiles, 6 missiles in each drum. They can perform combat missions but are not used often, as there are cheaper Tu-95s with a similar mission. The X-100 and X-555 are also being dropped. Destroying or damaging the plant is important to prevent the Russians from repairing Tu-160s and Tu-22M3s or assembling them from Soviet stockpiles. There are several, not dozens, of Tu-160 and Tu-22 remnants out there. They reassemble old airplanes, add avionics and engines, and try to present them as new. These are old Soviet planes that weren't completed, and now they're trying to finish them. If there is an opportunity to destroy, it should be taken. More than 1,000 kilometers to Kazan, Tatarstan is one of the republics that are involved in the production of weapons for this genocidal war against Ukraine. Tatarstan is a republic with its own system of governance. There, the president is called Rais, for example, Minikhanov. They are actively involved in the production of weapons. Shaheds produced in Alabuga are also Tatarstan. They have expanded the production of Shaheds by 3 to 4 times, getting nodes from China via Kazakhstan. Tatarstan, like the Tatars, is 700-800 kilometers away from Europe. Now we are stopping them by participating in production and becoming part of the Russian army. There will be a serious conflict with Tatarstan. Tatarstan will make a serious contribution to reparations and contributions both as part of Russia and after its withdrawal. And now we will destroy Tatar industries. Throughout Tatarstan, including an aircraft repair plant in Kazan. Mr. Roman, it was not quiet in St. Petersburg. A locomotive used for logistics of the Russian army was burned there. The head Department of Development of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine informed about it. On June 18th, a locomotive, which was used for logistics of the Russian army, was destroyed at a depot in St. Petersburg. This locomotive was transporting Russian ammunition, and equipment along the railroad. Taking into account that it is not subject to renewal, as stated by the GUR, how does it affect and what are the prospects of the rake war, I guessed? The main thing is that he should not take Lenin to Moscow. Otherwise, UNESCO will be fined for destroying such rarities. The GSD, I think, controls these processes. Racial warfare is one mechanism for destroying an enemy's logistics. This could be the destruction of railroad electronics control cabinets or the locomotives themselves. The Russians have particularly few locomotives. Both electric and diesel locomotives destroy their fleets. One mechanism for restoring logistics is to stop movement, especially through the railroad, which the Russian army has practically the only one. So far, such actions are few and far between, but trouble is not far off. We need to scale the tasks, find key points in the production and repair of electric and diesel locomotives to hit them, perhaps at the stage of production of engines or controls. There are such points. I think Gur will find them. Mr. Roman, the radiolocation station destroyed yesterday is not subject to renewal. The enemy lost a new radar station, Nebo, in Kherson region due to Ukrainian drones. This station was at the disposal of the 90th Anti-Aircraft Missile Brigade of the 49th Army of the Russian Federation. The peculiarity of the radar is that Russia often praises its ability to detect stealth, but keeps silent about its accuracy and target detection errors.
Defense Express наголошували, що коли у Росії розповідають про характеристики цієї РЛС, постійно говорять, що вона виявляє стелси, але мовчать з якою точністю, а про похибки виявлення цілей взагалі намагаються не згадувати.
0.1 square meter of effective area. Reflection at ranges of just over 100 kilometers. That's the meter range, not HLBMs, but VMs. This is one of the newest IEDs that set and fulfill RTB tasks. The enemy's radio eye was covered by 3 of our drones, which were not seen by the Russian station.
России, потому такие радиоглаза, или один, по крайней мере, радиоглаз был закрыт 3 нашими беспилотниками, которых почему-то такая распиаренная российская станция не увидела.
There is a mechanism for destroying them with such means of destruction. Maybe we already have stealth drones, not ruling out that possibility. The station can see targets at a range of up to 400 kilometers. It is a large radius of detection. Information can be transmitted to the pilots of Russian aircraft through the communication system. It's important for us to close our eyes and the pilots in the air, at least at this range. Identifying and destroying such stations is a priority task of the special services, the GUR and the SBU.
Наших спецслужб и сил спецопераций, Главное управление разведки, службы безопасности непосредственно тоже участвуют в выявлении и уничтожении такого рода станций.
Now aviation is getting involved. Operational level drones can be operated by our Ukrainian Air Force. There is a variant. The station is well taken by anti-radar missile HARM. After the advent of F-16s, we may have long-range HARMs. ER HARMs have a range of 100 to 150, up to 300 kilometers. In the future, it will be possible to hit stations when gaining superiority, but this station was hit by a drone. The Russian occupants do not respect the losses, trying to break through the defense of Ukrainian soldiers near Novosilka, Donetsk region, reported in Telegram channel OSU Kortitsia. Threats on this part of the front? We'll talk about Pokrovsk later. The situation is difficult in the area of Velikaya, Novosolovka. Our group holding the bridgehead has come under pressure from the south by Sovremenno-Kami Russian troops, who control the Vremyovka and are advancing to the west of Velikaya Novosiolka. From the north, from the Komar side, they are also approaching the main road. The road is practically closed, although the garrison of Velika Novoselyka still has ammunition and ammunition. Enough to hold army supplies. A week to a week and a half can perform the task even when surrounded. It all depends on the availability of forces to support and unlock if the Russians completely surround the Velika Novoselyka garrison. There are tactical actions that commanders in the field execute with senior commanders' assets. In principle, we can hold Velikaya Novoselka. It all depends on the forces and means. It will be clear in the coming days. It is difficult to lose Novoselyka because the Russians can move from it towards Novoselyka and reach the border of Donetsk, Dnipropetrovsk, and Zaporizhzhia regions. The situation is bad because the Russians can start moving from south to north towards Pokrovsk and close the encirclement of our Kurakovo garrison, stretched along the highway from Constantinople to Kurakovo. This is a problem and should be addressed by operational level commanders soon. Either to increase pressure on the Russians in the area of Velika Novoselyka, or to decide on a controlled withdrawal of troops from Velika Novoselyka in order to hold better, i.e. western-northwestern borders. Mr. Roman, Russian invaders do not want to stay in the battle for Pokrovsk. They want to bypass the city. The military observers, Denis Popovich, in the broadcast on the radio UNV. The commander-in-chief of the AFU, Oleksandr Syrsky, said the war cannot be won if we are on the defensive. He envisaged counterattacks, but to do this, you need to give the enemy the opportunity to attack and then deprive him of this opportunity. Now is not the moment. On the front, the situation is different. The tasks depend on the availability of forces and means. In some areas to hold the enemy, in others to withdraw, but with heavy losses to him. That's right. Russians are afraid to go into cities. Why? Because they lose up to 1,000 terrorists per house or street. They have plenty of personnel, but there is already a shortage, and it is noticeable all over Russia. There's a reason Putin announced the gathering of reservists months ahead of schedule. The Russians have never announced a collection of reserves in January, at least in my memory. There are big problems here, so they are trying to bypass from the south, for example, through Pokrovsk. There are areas where you can push on, but it's important to understand the target. A counterattack is always planned for the target, with the allocation of the necessary forces and means. In the Kursk direction, there is no task to seize Russian territory. Task, counteroffensive, to maximize the destruction of the Russian army and pin down tens of thousands of Russians in combat, which is quite successful. Real offensive action, including the liberation of Crimea, is possible with sufficient aircraft and long-range weapons.
может быть, наступательных действий в этом году для нас возможны. То есть они возможны только с помощью достаточного количества воздушной компоненты, то есть самолетов, средств поражения, ракетных. Мы уже сколько говорили с вами. Одно из основных наступательных действий в этом году возможно с помощью самолетов, ракет. Это освобождение Крыма дальними средствами поражения.
300 kilometers is the combat radius of most of our long-range weapons.
Рабочие радиусы, боевые рабочие радиусы практически большей части наших дальних средств поражения.
We can work all Crimean military facilities to the point of total destruction. The important thing is to have the means of defeat. With partners, a minimum of 2 operational and strategic level offensive operations are possible in 2025. One operation may be operational level, with possible entry into the Bryansk and Belgorod regions. One operation could be strategic, liberating Crimea with air and missiles. The most important thing is the reliability of the partners. Mr. Romanet, I thank you for what you've done. Thank you for your interesting thoughts. Roman Svitan, an instructor pilot and reserve colonel in the Ukrainian Army. Dear viewers, please write your thoughts on the topics we discussed. Don't forget, today is Trump's inauguration. Also write your thoughts on this event.